Hello everyone, I'm bringing you a video today talking about the British issue Golok pattern machete. Now this is a topic I've covered previously on the channel. This is a replacement video for those earlier videos. And the reason I'm making this is I was actually sent one of these, another example, by Mick Kelly, who sent me a huge collection of his kit and some bits and pieces he collected over the years. And I did cover that in a recent unboxing video. But I wanted to revisit this topic and compare the example I had previously, which dates from the early 60s, and the 70s example I got from Mick, and talk about the topic in a bit more detail. So that's what we're going to have a look at here, are two examples of the British issue Golok pattern machete. So here we have the two examples of the Golok pattern machete we're going to talk about. Prior to the introduction of these in the very late 1950s, early 1960s, around that time period, the British Army had been using Second War era machetes, and also the 1944 pattern, of course, and then certainly in the jungles of Malaya, locally procured jungle knives were quite commonly used as well. And the Golok pattern machete is designed to be shorter and handier than the 1944 pattern. It is a considerably shorter blade. The two examples we have here date from the early 1960s and the mid 1970s. The example nearer the camera here is the earlier example dating from 1961. And you can see the distinctive shape of the blade here if we look at this example. This particular example, the blade is partially blued up to here, and this actually includes the markings, I think, on the other side actually. Bring it up to the camera, yes, it's on the other side here. If I angle the light there, you can see this one manufactured by Elwell in 1961. You can see the stores code there and the government arrow. Elwell, of course, being a prolific manufacturer of blades, bill hooks, axes, that sort of thing. So very much a manufacturer of some renown in that regard. And you can see the handle here, neatly shaped there to give you a good grip, and a hole through the end there, obviously to put a wrist thong, as you can see, and obviously the rivets holding the handle in place there, the grips. You can see the distinctive shape of the blade there. The sheath of this is unmarked. We'll have a look at the sheath in more detail in just a moment after comparing the blades. This example, as you can see, is dated 1975, and again we have the code there and the government arrow. And on the other side we have the maker's mark, and this example made by Martindale, number 2, as you can see, their designation, and they've got the registered trademark there and the Martindale, I think crocodile. I think it's a crocodile, not an alligator if I remember correctly, but Birmingham, made in England, as you can see there. Of course, Martindale, as far as I'm aware, is still in business and still making these. Whether these are still issued or not, I'm not sure. They were until relatively recently, but Martindale still produce these and market them as the British Army machete, basically. You can see marking on the handle there, something S. The first letter is somewhat worn off, but again, you can see the rivets there. And in this case, we do have a section of nylon cord running through the hole on the handle there, and that of course would slip round the wrist like that to secure this when in use. I should point out the cut on my finger is nothing to do with the handling the machetes. That's to do with volunteering at the railway, where there's another of my hobbies. The sheaths for these are designed to work with the 1944 pattern equipment, which was still very much jungle issue when these were introduced, or theatre issue, and also some units were issued with it as well, but certainly very synonymous with British jungle operations and jungle training. And for that reason it has M1910 hanger hooks, which of course the 1944 pattern was designed to work with some American equipment and therefore used that as part of the design, as well as some of the components of the 1944 pattern having this, and the water bottle carrier and the machete sheath for the 1944 pattern machete. That was carried across to the Golok machete sheath, as you can see here. There is also a belt loop, you can see there. And these weren't used exclusively with 1944 pattern, of course. They were commonly used on 1958 pattern equipment as well, generally using the belt loop because the hanger hooks don't work very well with 1958 pattern. Can't remember if the eyelets are spaced correctly, but certainly it's awkward to use because the eyelets are higher up the belt. No markings on the sheath with the 1961 dated machete, but as you can see here, the sheath that came with the 1970s dated machete does have a nice clear stamp on the back, and this is manufactured by Miko, dated 1972. The government arrow there, as you can see, and then the store's code, the NATO stock number there. The construction of these is quite tough, as it has to be, containing machete. Obviously they need to be tough and up to the job. Riveted and double stitched You can see there the sort of thickness of webbing there to give the opening for the machete to be stored within, the actual opening in the sheath. You can see the metal throat there, riveted in place. Slightly different shape these at the end, as you can see, just slightly different angle, purely a manufacturing variation. And the blades are just a slightly different shape as well, but well within sort of manufacturing variation. A slightly sort of steeper taper off at the end of the blade on the 1961 dated example compared to the 1975. But again, that's just a variation in manufacturing, no actual change in the design. So overall, a shorter and handier version a shorter and handier design of machete compared to those which had gone before. And these weren't only used in the jungle. That's another important point to note. They're quite a useful general utility tool. A big knife is often a useful thing to have, essentially. And an example of that can be seen here. I've used this photograph, referenced this photograph previously. This is a soldier in the Falklands manning a GPMG in an anti-aircraft role. And you can see on his belt he has a Golok pattern machete. And just to show an example of one of these in use beyond the jungle environment where people typically think of them being issued and used. And the use of machetes outside of sort of a jungle environment goes back, they were certainly carried in Northwest Europe within a section. Again, just a useful utility tool to have available. Cutting branches and so forth is not only useful in a jungle environment, although in the Falklands there's a question there of to how much use there would be, but certainly carried in environments other than jungle. So just a point to note here. And that's a look at these two Golok pattern machetes. So I hope you found it interesting looking at these. Quite an interesting design and ubiquitous in British service from the middle years of the Cold War through the end of the Cold War and beyond, of course. So quite a long-lasting bit of kit. And I think they were quite functional. I think they were fairly well liked for the purpose for which they were designed. And as I say, quite a useful utility tool as opposed to just being used in a jungle environment, of course. So as I say, I do hope you found it interesting looking at these. If you have and you'd like to see more of this sort of thing, please do consider subscribing to the channel if you haven't already. And whether you're newly subscribing or you've previously subscribed, please do make sure you hit the little bell, the notification button down below. That will of course alert you when I upload future videos. If you really like my uploads and you would like to support the channel, you can. Patreon and PayPal are linked down below. And a huge thank you as always to everybody who supports the channel using those two methods. Thank you all very much indeed. It really is greatly appreciated. If you'd like to follow the channel on social media, you can. Facebook, Instagram and Twitter are all linked down below. And if you'd like to get in touch but you don't really use social media, there is of course an email address in the description as well. That's everything for this video. So until next time, bye for now.